But now we're seeing that it's wider than this. We already have a group, Z Street, which was a pro-Israeli group, which says it was targeted explicitly because it had opposed settlements on the West Bank, which was, of course, different than the Obama administration policy. If it becomes that wide and you get a lot of individuals, then there's trouble.
But, Arrianna, still nothing here touching the White House.
No, not touching the White House, but there's no question that even a lot of Democrats are very upset about the way Holder has not just been pursuing what he's been pursuing in terms of leak investigations, but remember last year bragging to the Senate Judiciary Committee that he has investigated more cases than any previous administration. So the IRS is a big problem. It goes beyond the two parties. It's really about the whole status of 501c4s and what are they about. You know, theoretically they are there to promote the social welfare exclusively in one paragraph, primarily in another paragraph.
And not supposed to do too much politics.
And not supposed to do too much politics. I'm sure if we look at Crossroads GPS, it was all about politics.
No, please. GPS, Crossroads GPS, an organization I helped create, but I don't run it. I'm not on the board. I'm not an officer. But the leadership knew right from the get-go they were going to be looked at closely. So the laws and rules that the IRS has promulgated for decades were followed very closely by GPS for exactly that. They knew they'd get extra scrutiny. Look, I love this. I love this. No concern
with the left.
Well, but you know what? You're the first person I've heard on the left say that, because these groups, 501c4 groups, have been active for years on the Democratic side, on the liberal side, and there have been no criticism. There was no criticism from the left in 2000 when the NAACP voter fund spent $10 million to run an ad accusing George Bush of being a bigot. No concern on the left when Americans United for Change ran television ads targeting Republican senators up for re-election in 2007 and 2008 over the Iraq surge.
So, go ahead. I don't want to bring Gwen.
Well, I'd say, first of all, you know, back in the prior administration, the NAACP was investigated after Republican members of Congress asked for it. But there's been no suggestion. The independent, the prosecutor looked at this, excuse me, the Inspector General said there was no politics involved in this. No one has indicated at all that the White House was involved. The IRS director was appointed under President Bush, served under both presidents, attested. No one from, so this was not a political pursuit.
Baloney.
Not baloney, Carl.
Well, if it was not political, then why are only conservative groups being targeted? Why did they pick
groups targeted?
Oh, really? Name one. Name one. What liberal group had Tea Party or Patriot in its name that it was targeted? Not a single liberal group has appeared to say.
You're taking bright license here, Carl.
No, I'm not. I am not at all.
This was not an effort driven by the White House. It would be the dumbest political effort of all time. Okay, this was.
I didn't suggest it was being driven by the White House, but I do think when the president.
So you think some people sitting in the Cincinnati office decided?
No. I think people sitting in Cincinnati, Laguna Niguel, Baltimore, and Washington D.C. listen to people like Senator Max Baucus, Senator Chuck Schumer. President Obama, when President Obama goes out in 2008 and 2010 and calls these groups, quote, a threat to democracy, he's blowing the dog whistle, and people heard it.
That when the administrator who was overseeing this went back and said actually narrow the guidelines, was trying to get them to change, and they wouldn't do it.
Well, look, that's my point. We have a culture at the IRS that has been going after conservative groups, and this administration has done an ineffective job of managing it. When this issue came up in 2010, if the administration was serious about it, President Obama should have picked up the phone and called Geithner at Treasury and said, you better get your Assistant Secretary for Treasury or the Undersecretary to check into this, because this is corrosive to our democracy to have the IRS targeting conservative